Welcome to Into Heals University, the Science and Soul podcast, where we cut through the noise and simplify self-healing. Because knowledge empowers, but action transforms. This is your roadmap to self-healing, giving you the tools to navigate your journey, take control, and create real change in your life. Today we are diving into MEPS, mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual legs of self-healing, and why this framework is the key to lasting transformation. MEPS is something that I teach my students at Massage and Osteopathic School. It is one of the most foundational, fundamental questions we need to know when it comes to treating our clients and our patients. And we need to know this for a few different reasons. The most obvious one is we need to know, well, where is it hurting and why is this happening? How can we make you feel better? But what a lot of people may not take into consideration is your body is like a battery tank. You've only got so much energy that you can expend in a day. Kind of like having a budget of, hey, I'm going to give you $200 each day. And once the money's gone, the money's gone. Once the gas is gone out of your gas tank, it's gone. You only have so much ATP in your system. And ATP is just a fancy word for the chemical reactions that are happening in your body that are giving you literally the gasoline to do what you need to do every single day. Every neuron that fires, everything that happens needs energy. We eat food and we take that food, we create it right down into some nice little glucose, and then your body uses glucose, handful of other things to make this thing called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And when you're ill, those resources may need to go to very specific areas. So you may want to go out in the evening for a party. You may want to go socialize. You may want to do, take up, speed skating, whatever it is that you want to do. But if your body is trying to fight off an invader, it just doesn't have those resources. So we kind of break it down into what have you got resources for? And in the osteopathic world, we actually spend quite a bit of time understanding the different areas that we spend these resources on. Now, I go a little bit deeper into this in some of my books, but simply put, that you've got your immune system that your body needs to be focusing on. It's got the basic functioning, kind of like what's going on in the background of your computer. The basic muscle, the basic neurology, we need to function. Then it likes to have a certain amount of energy to deal with your day-to-day life. And then it's got a certain amount of energy for your life purpose. And then you have a little bit of reserve. But that reserve may get used up when you got to change your job. You've got to move your house. One of your kids just had something huge happen to them. When your life gets a little bit upheavaled. So depending on what's going on in your life, you may not have enough reserves to do the things that you want to do. Now, if your computer's running slow, one of the things you'll say is, hey, shut down some programs. You don't need all those programs running. And this is what happens in the background of subconscious emotions and subconscious thoughts, beliefs, whatever you want to call it, is they're always running because we can't be aware of everything going on in our subconscious. We would literally go absolutely crazy if we said, hey, I want to know everything that's going on in my subconscious. Your mind would probably blow up. So you don't really know what's going on in the background. Well, if you're trying to make changes in your world, be it, hey, I'm going to change my diet. Hey, I want to start to do an exercise program. Hey, I want to start a self-healing program. Hey, I want to work on some emotional stuff. Hey, I want to work on X, Y, and Z, whatever it is. One of the things we'll do is detox. Hey, let's get the body cleaned out so that it's got more resources to do the fun stuff. And you can detox physically, emotionally, mentally, and quite frankly, spiritually, which we're going to get into. What are these legs and how do they work? So what I talk to my clients about is if you've got a lot of these programs running, you need to get rid of those. But how do you even know what they are, what's going on, and where you start? And sometimes when you get into the self-healing world, in any kind of self-healing, there comes that time where you're just overwhelmed and this isn't working. I'm tired all the time. Nothing's happening. I'm not getting what I want. This isn't what I expected. Or you just hit a roadblock. So the mental, emotional, physical, spiritual is like your compass. It's going to say you're going to go north, west, east, or south. It gives you the direction. Once you got the direction, you're like, okay, great. At least I know I'm heading in the right direction. From that moment, you just feel safe. So I live out in the West Coast. And sometimes I get disoriented because I'm not used to living out here. I've only been out here for 4 years. And then I'll see the mountains and I'll say, oh, that's due west. Well, at least I know I'm going in the right direction. Then I laugh it off, and all of a sudden, all those stress hormones are down. From there, I'll navigate. I'll say, okay, do I need to go down this road or that road? What area am I in? Is there an easier way to go? Well, that's when you use your intuition. And sometimes you can still use your north, east, west, south. But at least if you know you're in the right direction, it takes a huge amount of stress off of you. There's another reason why this is really important. It's because when you think about the flight, fight, or freeze, which we're actually going to get into when we talk about the vagus nerve in the next episode. But this is one of the reasons why I want you to understand this first. We'll talk about it again when we jump into really diving deep into the vagus nerve so you understand how that works. But before we get into that, what I want you to think about is the flight, fight, or freeze. We love the analogy, you're running from a bear, because obviously you'd freak out if you're running from a bear. So when you run from that bear, different physiological things happen. I'm not going to go over all of them, but to make it really quick, it's like somebody just punches you in the adrenal glands and bam, a whole pile of different chemical reactions happen that are very specifically designed to keep you safe. So you are either going to, take that bear on, or you're going to run away from it. Normally we run away from these things unless we're feeling super strong and hey, who knows, maybe we got a gun, we can shoot them. But generally speaking, you're going to run. So it's pretty fair to say that you're avoiding the pain. You're running away from it. That is one of the most natural responses we have as a human being. We do not like negative responses. Even when you see someone who's in a really negative mood or you're diving directly into the negative, you're still technically doing it for a positive outcome. Somehow being in that negative frame makes you feel safe, while being in a negative is not positive. Sounds kind of obvious, but what I mean is by being in a negative, you're not healing your body, but you are still trying to create something positive. So you're running from a bear, you are avoiding that pain. It is very normal to avoid something we don't like, to the point where we will do crazy things. We will make bad decisions. We will be like, why did I do that? I can't understand why I made that decision, or why did that go so badly, or what happened here? There's a part of you that was better than another alternative. We all have our fears, and they're all irrational, but they're rational to us. Now, when you look at doing subconscious belief work and you work at, hey, I want to get rid of these beliefs, create those beliefs. We'll get into that later when we get into some of our courses. But at the core of it all of those beliefs were created as a young child. Things that kept us safe as a child, we don't need to worry about as an adult. So imagine, mom and dad say, hey, you're not allowed to cross that street. You're not allowed to cross that street. But somehow you missed the message that said, hey, you're old enough now to cross the street, and you're terrified to cross that street. Well, you're going to kind of look silly if you're an adult terrified to ever cross a street. You look silly. But as a child, you don't look silly at all. And this is how our fears get to us. To us, they make complete logical sense. The fear is real, which is why they're so hard to overcome. It sounds crazy, but it's just how it works. So where I'm going with this is we all avoid negative emotions, negative reactions. We always avoid that worst pain. We don't usually sign up for those things. But when we want to go into the healing world, we need to surface the worst pain and then tackle it. So when my clients come to me and I got to do their assessment, I'll say, okay, tell me what hurts. Hey, my neck, where is it at? It's about a 6 out of 10. Okay. My hip is about a 4 out of 10. Okay. My hamstring, it's an 8 out of 10. All right. So you've got this list, and I usually tackle the worst pain first. Why do I tackle the worst pain? Because the brain always says area of priority. So if your low back is the worst pain and your shoulder is a little less, but I decide to work on your shoulder, you likely are going to feel more pain in the low back later on because I didn't address the worst pain. So imagine breaking your leg, and you go to the hospital and they're like, oh, well, we don't really have the equipment here to fix your leg, but hey, let's work on that neck pain you've been complaining about. You're going to go, get away from me. And so the body does the same thing. It's always giving you that message of, hey, ding, 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 this is what we want you to work on. But then you're fighting it going, no, I'm not going to deal with that emotion. I'm not going to deal with that thought. So then you make something else up and say, hey, look at me. I'm doing all of this healing work. And you kind of look silly, but it makes sense to you because you're not even allowing that worst one to come up. So then you decide to go to therapy and the worst thing comes up for you. And now you are in full-blown anxiety because somebody just surfaced your worst fears. And you're like, how is this helpful? So it can be so hard when you're in this self-improvement world and in any kind of treatment. So what I created was something called MEPS. So all my students know, hey, what is your patient's MEPS? Or I'll say this to my clients, anybody I'm working on, what is the worst one? Because if you come to me with low back pain, but your emotional, your mental, or your spiritual is actually higher, I'm not really doing you a good service by manipulating your low back, while I know something else is feeding into it. It's also just as unfair for me to say, hey, this is all caused by emotions. Meanwhile, no, you got a herniated disc. Let's work on that herniated disc. So there's the mental, emotional, physical, spiritual really kind of come together and they're blended. They're a system. So in osteopathic, we talk about mind, body, soul. You hear that a lot, mind, body, soul, mind, body, and soul. But it's not mind, body, and soul. They work together. It's a system that works fluidly together. So I spend a lot of time working on this. So understanding the importance of it is the foundation. And from there, we're going to work with MEPS throughout the entire program. We're always going to come back to it. We're going to be coming in and out of it. And it can get a little bit complicated to know, I'm a little challenged to know, is this actually mental? Is it emotional? Is it mental or is it actually spiritual? What's going on? So it can get a little bit convoluted. So I've created a series of questions you can ask yourself. We're going to go over some of them today so that you can figure out, well, what is my actual worst area? Now, once you figure out what your worst area is, that's what you work on. So at least now you've got a direction. Hey, I'm going to stick to this for a little bit. Then maybe the next day, it flips into something else. So maybe you work on mental for a day. Maybe you work on it for a month. Maybe you work on emotional for a day. Maybe you work on it for a month. Sometimes you kind of bounce around. But what it's going to do is it's going to teach you to listen to your body, to respond to your body. The more you start responding to your body, the brain's going to start to say, okay, all right, she's listening, he's listening. All right, I think we're on a good path here. From there, we start doing a little bit more intuition training. Listen to your intuition, know your intuition. And it's a little different for everybody. So it's really important you learn how to read yourself and know what works for you. Now, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here because I don't want to jump into intuition just yet. We will be doing some more podcasts on that. For today, I want to come back to something I said in my last episode, which is the story of when I sometimes do shockwave therapy and I'm breaking up all of those knots. And afterwards, my clients will say, yeah, the pain was gone, but it was like I couldn't believe it was gone. Like, what is that all about? It is the most bizarre feeling. I had it when I started doing these treatments as well. And I want to talk to you about that because studies do show that chronic pain can lead to changes in neural circuits. And this causes the brain to kind of memorize pain responses. This means even after that physical source is gone or it's been addressed, the pain might continue to generate pain sensations because it's kind of accustomed to it. So if we break this down into simple terms, we as humans need to be in control of our lives. We like to know what to expect, to be safe, and to protect ourselves. And when we get stressed, it's normal to want to become a control freak. So for this very reason is why I'll tell my clients, you may not believe this is working, even when it is. So sometimes you need a little bit of reassurance because you can throw in the towel way too fast. So it's sometimes nice to be working with someone, talking to someone, have somebody else validate your experience because your brain won't even let you see the changes. It won't even let you take the wins. You imagine winning the biggest game of your life and going, oh, I didn't realize we won. Well, that would just suck. So we're going to teach you how to train yourself to self-heal. So as a massage therapist, as an osteopath, as a kinesiologist, I've been treating patients for 30 years. One of the biggest things I do is assessment, assessment, assessment. Then I treat, I go back and reassess. I spend a lot of time helping my clients see what's been happening. And sometimes my client will come back to me and say, oh, well, this is worse. And then they describe it to me and I said, oh my God, this is so exciting. And they look at me like I got 10 heads and said, excuse me, what? And then I explained to them. And then they're like, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? So it's really hard to see your own stuff, right? That can be really challenging. So this is also a way to teach you to do what we as therapists are doing with our patients. Be it your chiropractor, your massage therapist, your osteopath, your physiotherapist, your doctor. All of us are trained. We know how to interview you. We know how to pull this information out of you. We know how to test. We know how to treat. We know how to retest. We know how to reevaluate, and we modify as we go. So self-healing means you now need to learn how to do that for yourself. And that's what the whole program is actually about. And we use MEPS as our framework so that you at home are able to step back and say, whoa, I need to reassess. Because that's what we do as practitioners. So if I have a client coming to me who I'm like, okay, what is happening here? I can just step back and go, well, let's go back to the drawing board and let's reassess. And bang, I'll find out what's going on. So I'm teaching you how to be able to do that for yourself. It is so much easier when my clients come to me and they know exactly what's happening, or at least close to it. Our results are so much better. And we get so much further in each session. The more aware you are, the more changes that are going to happen for you. So we're going to jump right in. We're going to do a little assessment. If you have a pen and paper handy, grab it. If not, make this a really quick one. We spend a lot more time with this in the Into University program. You can sign up for the MEPS program for free. The reason why I offer it for free is because when my clients go through this program, I get so much further with their conditions. So this is their homework. So if you want to, go to intoheals.ca, and right inside the university, you can sign up for free. I'll put the link in below so that if you want to jump in there, you can give that a try. So I want you to ask yourself, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much pain are you experiencing with worrying, anxiety, negative narratives running in your head? Are your thoughts about survival, decision-making, and overanalyzing? Are your thoughts lifting you up, or are your thoughts lifting you or pulling you down? Now, one thing I want to make sure that you're able to understand here is we're talking about thoughts, not feelings. We're going to go into emotions next. We don't think about how we feel it. We don't think about love. We don't think about hate. We don't think about worry. We don't think about these things. We feel them. So when you think about how much worry, anxiety, it's about the negative narratives. It's about the things you say to yourself. Sometimes it helps to just talk out loud. And what are you saying to yourself? How are you talking to yourself? So the things that are going through in your head, and you can usually tell what that is by the overanalyzing. And the reason why we overanalyze is because we go deep into that sympathetic nervous system, which we're going to talk about in the next podcast with the vagus nerve. But you're running from that bear, and bam, you get hit in those adrenal glands. And when that happens, you are in full-blown sympathetic nervous system. And in that moment, you are running from that bear. You're running. And if somebody says to you, well, stop and smell the flowers, you're going to look at them and probably punch them in the face and say no. You may even ignore them, and you might get really angry because you're trying to focus on getting away from the bear and they're getting in your way. that system is creating that need for control. So on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you give yourself? 10 being like over the top, I'm going to die. 9 being I'm really close. 8 being I'm probably going to kill somebody soon. Down to, no, I don't really think about it. No. Next, we're going to talk about emotional pain. Emotional pain usually shows up as sadness, grief, and loneliness. Mind you, anger is less of an emotion and more of action oriented. It pushes you to change. Frustration is pre-anger. Frustration is more about disappointment. So I want you to think about how much does your heart ache and write that down. Now, if you're getting a lot of anger, but you're not making changes, then give yourself that number for the time being, but we're going to come back to it. Because it's still an emotion. Feeling angry is still an emotion, but it's supposed to propel you for change, which means there's probably something mentally that's holding you back, or a different emotion that's actually holding you back. And give that a scale of 1 to 10. How much pain do you feel with your emotions? Next, we're going to talk about the physical pain. Now, this is anything from a chronic condition to a localized pain. This could be hip pain, sciatica, headaches, shoulder. It could be a herniated disc. It could also be digestive discomfort, or maybe you've got an underlying condition and it's just not under control right now and it's causing a lot of organ pain. So on a scale of 1 to 10, what is that physical pain at? Give it a number. One of the things I ask my clients to do is separate it. So just kind of pick a generalized number for now. Don't worry about saying, well, my back is an 8, my shoulder's a 5. Say, generally speaking, my worst pain, what's it at? Then we jump into spiritual pain. Now, spiritual pain actually represents the connection to yourself, to others, and your life's purpose. I don't want to get into different religions or spirituality. You obviously can apply this to that. But what I want you to step back is, how disconnected do you feel from friends, family, work, or your sense of self? The bigger the disconnect, the more pain you feel. So I always say this is your relationships. This is your relationship to self, your relationship to your friends, to your family, to your job. Maybe you're in a relationship and you're like, if I don't get out, it's going to kill me. Maybe you're having to be a caregiver to somebody else. Maybe you're having to change jobs, or you need to get out of a job that you don't like, or you want to move out of the house, or you want to make a shift and a move in your life. All of that gets lumped into spiritual pain, your sense of purpose. And I want you to give yourself a number from 1 to 10. So if you're going, no, like I feel awesome, like, maybe I feel great. Then say, like, I'm great, like I'm an 8 out of 10 happy. Then just flip it and make your pain a 2 out of 10. So now you have your 4 numbers. Which one is the worst? Whichever one is the highest number. Even if something is an 8 and something is a 7, 8 is your highest number. That is where you need to focus. So let's say your worst number is, I need to get out of this job. And then the excuses will start to follow. But I got to about. They're excuses, and they're very valid excuses likely. But if you don't deal with that, everything else you're doing is not going to be able to do what you want it to do. So it's going to be very important that you work on that. Now, let's say it is spiritual pain that is your worst pain. And you're saying, hey, I need a little bit of time before I can switch jobs or move out of this house, or I'm going through grief. There's nothing you can do to fast forward grief. It's not going to happen. Well, what you can do then is, between my mental, my emotional, my physical, what's the next highest and how is it connected to the other highest. So you can tackle it that way so that maybe you're not quite ready to hit that 8, but you can do it indirectly. So when we do treatments, we call it doing direct work, which means I'm going to put my hand right into that area, or I'm going to treat something else that's going to affect the area I want to get because I can't get into it. If I do, I'm going to trigger it. That's not going to be good for my patient. So this is where you're going to do either treat the area directly or treat it indirectly. But either way, you're going to feel that change. You're going to decrease the pain. Maybe it's a spiritual pain of, hey, I just feel disconnected right now. I'm stressed all the time. I'm not doing my life's purpose, and you're freaking out. Then you can stop and say, well, my next worst one is actually my shoulder. It's really hurting. Okay, maybe you go see one of your therapists, work on your shoulder, knowing very well the other area you do need to work on, but you've agreed to work towards it. You may find that there are some emotions that are connected with it. You might find that as you start to connect those dots, it gets easier and easier to be able to make the change you need to make. And your subconscious knows everything. So it knows if you're getting one step further to that goal, it's going to decrease its pain because you know what? You're listening. The moment your brain says, hey, you're listening to me, maybe I can shut that pain down a little bit and I'll give you a message for something else. So you're allowing that GPS to work. So if you are out on the road and you make a right when you're supposed to make a left, it's going to scream at you, recalculating. But if you turn in the right direction, it's just going to it's going to take you to where you want to go. Okay, so that's your MEPS. We will spend a lot of time with that within that university. But if you can start working on that now and then start to organize yourself to say, okay, I kind of know which leg I want to work on. So I know I need to work on my thoughts. I know it's mental. It's my worst pain. What am I going to do about it? Well, then you can have a direction where you want to go to. So that's MEPS. We will talk a lot about that more in another episode. And we're going to jump in the next episode. We're going to talk about the vagus nerve. You hear so much going on about the vagus nerve, but I do find that there's a little bit of misconceptions out there. And even if you are understanding it, it's a lot harder to quote unquote strengthen or to regulate than you may realize. So what we're going to do next is we're going to talk about the vagus nerve, but we're also going to talk about how we can use MEPS as a framework to actually work on that nerve. Now, if you give this a go, you give it a try doing something today under one of those pain points, mental, emotional, physical, or spiritual. Address it. See how you feel the next day. Remember that battery I talked about earlier in the episode. You only have so much ATP. When you deal with your worst pain point, you then give yourself more bandwidth. When you give yourself more bandwidth, you have a little bit more energy to exercise. You have a little bit more energy to tackle something that you need to tackle. You have a little bit of time. Sometimes you feel like you're running out of time when you're really stressed out. The more you tackle the worst pain point, the bigger you're going to give yourself in that free zone, as I like to call it, that little extra space. You give yourself more bandwidth. You're going to find that you're not quite as tired. Then you'll start to feel a little bit more motivated. So try and pay attention to those wins. See if you can see, oh, yeah, I feel something positive from that. We'll spend a bit of time talking about positive thoughts, negative thoughts, and then we'll dive into the vagus nerve in the next episode. I hope to see you there.